Welcome back, friends. You're just in time for the Johnny Brew Show.
What's going on, everybody? My name is John Brookhagen, host of the Johnny Brew Show, and welcome to Red Wave 22. I just came up with that, so I'm going to have to start using that. I should have used it on the Stan Hyatt interview that you guys saw last night, but yeah, the Johnny Brew Show is giving you all the coverage of Red Wave 22, and I'm really hoping that we can get some conservatism back in our government, because we should be a red state. I truly believe that. That's why I moved here in 2005. And in order to keep promoting what I hope to be is the red wave, we have another wonderful candidate, a guy who is not just a candidate, but he's actually been a politician for quite a while after serving with Metro for, I think it was 30-something years or 30 years. And we're going to find out everything you want to know about what a lieutenant governor even does, his history in politics, including that last election that I know a lot of you guys want to know about, and what it was like working with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, again, for 30 years. So without further ado, I introduce to you candidate for lieutenant governor in 2022, Mr. Stavros Anthony. Welcome, Stavros. How are you?
Great to be on the famous Johnny Brew Show, and I just want to thank you for being a voice for the people and the Constitution in this country.
Well, that's really nice. Thank you very much for the compliment. And coming from you, that's really nice. We had, just as one example, a few weeks ago we had Vasilia Boskovic, who is Miss Teen Nevada or USOA Teen Nevada. And she's been making the rounds, and she met a couple of mayors. She met the governor. She met a bunch of other politicians. And when I'm talking to her, she's a student of mine, and I'm like, "Oh, that's really great. You know, who did you like?" And of all the politicians and stuff she met, she mentioned your name, and I thought that was really cool. And obviously, for some reason, you seem to really make a connection with people when you meet them.
Well, I appreciate that. She's a great young lady. I've known her for a long time. She's a member of the St. John's Greek Orthodox Church, where I attend, and I've known her mom for a long time, and they're just wonderful people. And she's going to be a leader of something.
She's
one
going to
day.
change the world. That's for sure. And you mentioned that you went to the Greek Orthodox Church. I didn't know that, but I did know you were Greek. How did I know? Because your last name, it doesn't have 14 letters plus Oapolis at the end. How did you manage that?
So that's a interesting story. So my mom and dad are Greek Cypriots. They're from the island of Cyprus.
Right. And there was a great mathematician from Cyprus. Who was it? Solmus was Pythagoras. Anyway, I'm sorry, I could go. Greeks have a lot of history in mathematics, and that's my bag.
I'm going to have to look that up.
Okay, so Cyprus.
So my mom and dad immigrated to the United States from Cyprus, and when my dad came over here, his last name was Andoniou. And
that rolls right off the tongue.
It does, Andoniou. And
how do you spell it? Just like it sounds.
Exactly. So his uncle, who he came here who sponsored him, says, "Hey, Andoniou is way too much of a Greek name. You need to make it American." So he says, "Well, what should it be?" He goes, "How about Anthony?" And he changed it to Anthony.
Done deal.
And then he turns around and I'm born, and he names me Stavros.
Right. Just to remember where you come from.
Exactly. So I get a lot of people. They say backwards. They think Stavros is my last name when it's actually my first name. But if you go to Greece or Cyprus, just about everybody's named Stavros. Here, I'm the only one. So that's the history behind it. But,
and I've heard a lot of stories about immigrants getting their names changed at Ellis Island. We used to only come through Ellis Island, and a lot of people, whether they were racist or nationalists or whatever the case may be, they're just like, they see a large Czechoslovakian or Greek name, and they're just like, "How about Smith?
Right.
What do you do for a living?" "Oh, yeah, I'm a butler." "All right, Stavros Butler." "How about Anthony?" Stavros Anthony. All right. So, where were you born? Where did you grow up? Tell us about your formative years.
So, as I said, my mom and dad came here from Cyprus. They didn't know each other. They came here separately.
From Cyprus, but separate.
And what's interesting is this was the 50s, and they lived in two small villages, probably 5 miles apart. But back then you didn't get around.
The world was a lot bigger.
It was you got around on donkeys back then. So 5 miles on a donkey is a long way. So they never met each other. They came over here. They got introduced to each other in the 50s. They got married, and then we were living in. They were in Kansas City, Missouri. My dad was. He was just peeling potatoes, and just a hard-working guy. And then he became a cook. And then.
And where was this?
This was in the 50s in Kansas City, Missouri.
Kansas City, Missouri.
And that's where I was born. And then my 2 sisters were born. And
you're the oldest.
I'm the oldest, yes. And what's interesting is when I started kindergarten, I didn't speak English. I only spoke Greek.
At home.
At home, yeah.
Right.
So we didn't have back then. When you went to school, you just learned English.
Immersion.
Exactly. That immersion, exactly right. So I just picked up English, and we grew up in Kansas City. And my dad ended up kind of going up the chef ladder, and he ended up being an executive chef. And then,
I want you to keep going. I don't want to forget my point, but you could relate then a lot to some of these Hispanic families who speak Spanish, their formative years and in the house, and then they get thrust into a school situation, and they have to deal with immersion. Of course, we have more programs such as ELL, but I'm sure you could sympathize. And look at you, you're a public speaker in English now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And unfortunately, I've lost a lot of my Greek because I don't really speak Greek to anybody.
It?
But, I give credit to, people that come to this country and they work hard. They work themselves up the occupational ladder, and they start to learn English and math and, everything else. And they just want a better life for themselves and their family. So we ended up moving to Detroit, Michigan, because my mom's 2 sisters lived in Toronto, and Detroit was about the closest you can get to Toronto without leaving the country. So we ended up moving to Toronto. My dad.
And how old were you?
I was 10 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 1967. In fact, it was they had the 1967 riots in Detroit, which were pretty bad.
Right.
And but we ended up moving out in the suburbs. We did not move to the inner city, and it was a great place to grow up. And my dad continued his career. He ended up being the executive chef for the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club, which is the most exclusive club in Michigan.
Really?
It's where the Fords and the Chryslers went. So he was the executive chef there, and I was a busboy in my
How old were you when
days.
you had your first job?
I was probably 14 years old. He put me in the kitchen washing pots.
14
years old.
The Johnny Bruce show is supposed to be about you and not me, but I just feel so many parallels because I lived in New York City, and then when I was 8 or 9, I moved out to Long Island, the suburbs, out of the inner city, and I had my first real job. I delivered papers and stuff, but my first job outside of delivering papers, I was a busboy at an Italian restaurant, and I was about 13 or 12 years old, and I'm just feeling like I understand what you're saying. And my mom was born in 50. Were you born in 57?
I was born in 57.
Yeah, my mom was born in 57.
Oh,
yeah. So everything's kind of falling into place. It's easy for me to follow your story.
Yeah.
So we're in Detroit. We're in high school. We're bussing tables and washing dishes.
Washing dishes, bussing tables. I ended up being a wrestler. I was a wrestler for my high school team for 3 seasons. I graduated from high school, and then I went to Wayne State University,
all right,
which is right in the middle of Detroit.
Right. Well, I think we all know about Wayne County because there was some considerations about elections, and do you know anything about elections?
I know about
and the 2020
Nevada
election?
elections, and I hope we're going to have time
That's
to talk
a teaser.
about that.
I have a feeling we'll be able to make some time for that. All right, so Wayne State, and what are you going to study? Criminal justice, I'm going to guess?
Interesting. I started out in pre-optometry. I wanted to be an optometrist. I don't know why. It was something I thought would be a great career. And then I was working full-time in the restaurant where my dad was, and I needed another job because I was paying my own tuition. And I was living at home, but I needed the money to pay the tuition. So I happened to see, those bulletin boards at colleges where they put part-time jobs.
Right. Either be in the Army or you could be an optometrist.
Exactly.
You're like, maybe you have optometry.
So I saw one for a police cadet with the Wayne State Police Department. The university had their own police department. So I said, well, that paid like $8 an hour or something. So I said, I'll go do that. So I went applied, and they gave me the job, and it was it was in a uniform, but you didn't have a weapon, and you would walk around the university.
Like Molly the meter maid.
Something like that, yeah, exactly. Right. So I did some ride-alongs, and I said, you know what? this is my career. I want to be a police officer.
And this is when you were 19 years old?
This was, 19, 20 years old, yeah. So I switched to criminal justice, and I graduated with my criminal justice degree.
Was that 2 years or 4 years?
4 years.
4 years?
Yeah, 4 years. So I graduated, and it was 1980, and it was a very bad auto recession in Detroit. So nobody was hiring police officers. So I was 23 years old and decided I need to, maybe move on someplace else. So I happened to notice Las Vegas was hiring police officers. Didn't have any reason to come out here,
right,
except for that. So I tested. I came out here, tested. I went to, I was getting ready to go to Dallas and test there, and they called up and said, the academy starts in 3 weeks. You're hired.
Can you make it?
And I said, 3 weeks? I said, okay. So I threw everything into my old Chevy Chevette. You probably don't even remember that car.
No.
It was a piece of junk. But I threw a couple of plates and some spoons, and I had $500 in my pocket, and I joined out, drove out here and joined the police department.
All by yourself? No girl, no parents?
Didn't know anybody. Stayed in a hotel downtown for a week until I found another person.
Sounds like everybody who moves to Vegas.
Yeah. And the rest is history. Been out here for 41 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was in 1980?
1980.
And, we had Stan Hyde on last night. He did the same exact thing from San Diego. He moved here in 1978 just because he wanted to be a cop, and Vegas said the academy starts, and he came here. And looks like we're getting some great patriots thanks to Metro's recruiting tools in the late 70s, right? So then you continued your education once you came to Nevada. So first of all, what was it like being a rookie? First of all, you're saying you were super green. You're in a brand new city. You're barely, even got your 3 plates that you moved in, put in the cupboard, and now you're on the beat or you're in the academy. What was it like being a rookie cop in a foreign city?
Well, I'll give credit to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Their academy and field training program was top notch. So they gave us the best training I could possibly have to be a police officer in the field training academy. Again, the best training, and it was about a year and a half later they actually put you out on your own. But it was you learn about arresting bad guys safely. You learn about community policing. You need to be out in the community helping people. You learn about solving problems in the community, not just arresting people.
Right.
And I had an absolutely great
career. So they
career.
were big on that. They were big on the community aspect. Because, obviously, if you're a cop, you're only spending at most 10% of your time chasing bad guys and locking them up. Otherwise, you're patrolling, you're interacting, you're addressing things, and hopefully we're not going to the Supreme Court with every little problem. Hopefully you could, tell people, oh, come on, And they're big on that. Yeah,
I tell people 90% of police work is just out there talking to folks, and then 10% is sheer terror.
Right,
when you have to arrest somebody who's resisting arrest or a pursuit. But that's really about 10% of your job. The rest of the time, you're just out there trying to help people, and that's what you do.
It sounds like you're playing poker. You're just sitting around a table doing nothing for communicating, community stuff. Oh, and then you're in a hand, and it's terror, and then you're back to the grill again. So what made you decide to continue to educate yourself?
So what happened was I was a police officer for 10 years, and then I was a sergeant for 5 years, and then I got promoted to lieutenant. I was lieutenant for 4 years, and then I was, my last 10 years, I was a police captain. So in between that, I just decided that I need to just continue to better myself, and that's something that was important to me. I was married at the time, and
How'd you meet your girl?
So we were dating at Wayne State University, and
don't tell me that you guys both went to Wayne State and then came to Vegas.
Well, we went to Wayne State, and when I got the job, I went to her and I said, and she always tries to correct this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway.
She's not here right now.
She's
That's okay.
She's
it's all you. And
so I told her, I said, listen, I'm going to move into Las Vegas. I want to be a police officer, and I'd like you to come with me. And she says, the only way I'm going to come with you is if we get married. And I said, okay, will you marry me? And that was it. So I went to Las Vegas. I got through all the training portions, and then once I was done and settled in.
What was that, like a year and a half?
About a year and a half, yeah. Went back to Detroit. We got married in Detroit at the Greek Orthodox Church in downtown Detroit. and it was January. It was freezing.
In Detroit?
In Detroit, it was bad. So, and then the next day, we loaded up my her car, which was a Mustang 2.
So I've heard of a Mustang. We're getting better.
Mustang 2 was not what you think of a Mustang.
Right,
it's just a
right.
sedan.
That's the sedan version.
So, and a U-Haul, and we packed everything up, and we drove back out, and we've been married ever since, 41 years. I have 2 daughters.
How old are your daughters?
They're in their 30s.
Wow.
One is married and has 3 of my grandkids, and then the other one is single, living in New York City.
Well, congratulations. It sounds both ends of the spectrum.
Yes. So back to your question. So in between,
do you remember? I don't remember. What was can you repeat the question?
So in between all that, I said I got to continue to better myself. So I decided to go back to UNLV. I got my master's degree in political science. And then a few years...
Political science because you had an affinity for politics, or just because that was something not criminal justice that was related to your line of work?
Exactly, the second one. I already knew criminal justice, so I wanted to get kind of some information on something else.
But not baking, because you don't bake when you're a cop.
Right. So it was political science, but I tell you, Johnny, I had no inclination to run for office. It was just, hey, let me go take political
Shop
science.
Talk.
Yeah. So a few years later, I went back to UNLV, and I ended up receiving my PhD in sociology. It took about 4 years to do that.
Dr. Anthony.
I am. And
so why don't you go around like Dr. Jill Biden and make sure everybody calls you a doctor?
You know what? I'm a simple guy. Just call me Stavros. You know, the big titles are not that important to me. So
maybe that's why people like you.
Well, it could be. So technically, I am a doctor, but I don't tell anybody that.
So what did you get your PhD in?
I ended up. It was in sociology, and what I ended up studying was criminal behavior.
Right.
And my main focus is organizational theory. I like studying how organizations are set up. So I ended up doing my dissertation on the structural dimensions of community-based policing organizations. So I studied what police departments look like that had a real big focus on community policing, how they were structured.
Like you were trained at Metro.
Yeah, so I ended up doing that, and then people were calling me all over the country going, hey, I need a copy of your dissertation because we want to structure our police department like a community policing department. So it was very wildly...
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because this is in the late 80s now. I'm guessing. That's what I meant.
This would have been... I graduated in 2009.
Wow,
Yeah.
That's even better. I mean, you went back to school as an adult. I
Yes.
did the same thing. You have a new a fire for learning.
Right.
You know, it's not so much about the grade. It's more about the wealth of
just
knowledge.
about learning. I didn't want to tell you the truth. I didn't want to be pigeonholed as a police officer. I wanted to be learn about other things that were going on because I thought it would help me.
Well, it
better.
sounds like
and it did.
Turned out to be the exact perfect path.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about this community policing and the sociology of the structure of large organizations, if I'm getting that right,
Correct.
That's really pretty amazing considering that just 5 years later, we began with the BLM movement and the Hands Up, Don't Shoot, which, all evolved into things that they probably shouldn't have. But nonetheless, they're talking about stuff like structural racism and inherent things that are built into the structure of the capitalist or the constitutionalist government. And this has been something that you just got your doctorate on, that you can speak on, I'm guessing, a lot more thoroughly than some of the people who are going on CNN talking about it. I mean, this has been your field of study. You are Dr. Anthony, with all joking set aside. So how did you feel with the evolution and the calls of systematic racism? And what do you think were the solutions to these problems? And were they even problems in the first place?
It's interesting because when I studied police organizations, I spent a year studying them and writing it down. People today just stuff pops into their mind and they say, well, police departments are racist, and I don't know how, but they are.
Right.
And that's how people act today. They just spew filth and destruction, and you can't tell me police departments are made up of human beings. So you may have a couple of racists in the department, but you can't tell me a police department is racist unless you can prove it.
Right.
And police departments in this country, 99% of them are made up of police officers that are dedicated their life to protecting their community, to protecting the Constitution, and they don't go out there looking for certain types of people except the ones that are committing crimes.
Right.
That's what they're looking for. So it's unbelievable how in my day police departments were respected, police officers were respected. If a police officer did something wrong, they were disciplined, they were fired.
Held accountable.
They were held accountable. In fact, I was the captain of internal affairs for a couple of years, so I was involved in that.
Is that a tricky position? I mean, I can only imagine that, I'm sure you love the cops, you love the country, you love the job.
Yeah.
But your job is to get rid of the bad ones.
And what's interesting about that is 80% of the complaints that came in, we ended up exonerating the police officer because they were bogus complaints. But, there's 20% people had to get disciplined and terminated, and that's just the way the police departments are. But you're not going to find police departments that are racist.
Inherently, systematically racist.
I have no idea what that means. I mean, nobody knows what that means.
Right.
They just make stuff up, So it's as I said, back in my day, it was a little bit different. Today, you have a group of people in this country that are attacking police officers, that are attacking police departments. You just had this police officer, these two police officers that died in New York City, and some knucklehead sends out some tweet saying they're not heroes, don't treat them like heroes. I mean, it's just pathetic.
I think the people of New York would disagree.
Yes.
If you saw any of the ceremony, I mean, the whole city, if not a large part of the country, stopped while we paid homage to the one gentleman. The other gentleman will be laid to rest soon. And just listening to his wife speak, I'm sure you got a chance to hear about that. And, it's really, really sad because I was saying, these are like 22-year-old kids. Like, I'm 45 and I'm finally starting to see how the government works and how everything is intertwined. You're, 10, 15 years older than me, and you've got a lot more experience than me, obviously. And then I look at these 22-year-old kids who are thrust into these positions, and the kid was, when he was 18, before he became a cop, said, I want to be the change. He said, all you guys are talking about cops are racist, cops are bad. He goes, I want to serve my community, and if the cops are bad, I want to change it, and if they're not, I want to be a member of the community. And the kid was just so mature and wise, and he was a hero. I mean, and he had such a short time on this earth, but I think, he's somebody that's going to be remembered for a long, long time thanks to that. And I think that stories like this need to be more publicized because these are real people.
Right. And I think what you said earlier is the New York City's with these officers. I travel all over southern Nevada, and people in this community, they support the police. It's a small group that have this megaphone that are spewing filth. Right. And I'm glad that you're behind the megaphone supporting the cops. So, we need more people like you.
My concern is the brainwashing, though.
Yes.
I mean, if you hear it enough times, it becomes reality. I mean, there's people, we're not talking about COVID now, but, with the media or the propaganda, some people are literally scared for their lives. Healthy people. Of course, if you're 78, and you're a cancer survivor, maybe you should be careful. But, you got 25-year-old healthy young men and women that are literally scared for their lives because of the brain, because you hear it so many times. And I'm just afraid that after 8 years now of hearing that cops are racist, do people start to buy into that narrative?
It's a good point. Yeah.
It's scary. So you were 30 years with Metro, or
29.
Why you couldn't hit 30? Don't you get a bump in retirement?
So I ended up winning the city council race, and I had to retire. So if I hadn't run for the city council, I probably would have stayed one more year because 30 just sounds better than 29. But
there isn't an advantage?
Not really. No. Once you hit 25 years, that's
then it's basically you're in that section or whatever.
Yeah. So there's maybe a little bit more financial reason to stay, but 29 years was plenty, but I probably would have stayed one more year.
So what happened? So this is 2009, I believe?
2009, yeah.
All right. So you're, or is it 2008, the election?
2000.
The election was 2008, and then you took office 2009?
Let me correct something. I received my PhD in 1999.
Okay, that makes
getting-
a lot more sense.
The
Gotcha.
years are starting to get jumbled up. 1999, because that's the year that in December 1999 I graduated with my PhD and I was promoted to captain. And then I spent the next 10 years. So in
Got you.
2009 is when I ran for the city council and won. Yeah.
So you ran in 2008 and took office 2009? Or is there an off-year election? Because 2009 is an odd year.
Yeah, so the election was in June. No, yeah, it was all in 2009. I took
thing.
office December of 2009 because the election was that
It
year.
was earlier that year.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
You're asking me some really hard questions now.
Well,
'cause
I'm trying to
I'm trying to remember
compartmentalize
stuff.
everything, and I realize I might be getting in the weeds. People want to hear more about,
No, that's good.
But nonetheless, so how does that work? Did you have to win the election before you resigned, or did you have to resign in order to run?
So just to backtrack a little bit, when I received my PhD, I kind of became the higher education guy in the department. So I had a lot of police officers come to me and say, hey, can you help me get started? I want to go back and get my bachelor's degree. Because I was the first one to get a master's at Metro, and I was the first one to get a PhD.
Really?
So I was kind of known for that. So I enjoyed helping people
You were
get...
like the counselor.
Yeah, I was, exactly. I was helping people get back into higher education. So opportunity came up to run for the Nevada System of Higher Education Board of Regents.
Right.
So it was a part-time job. They
Kind of like the school board, the Board of Regents.
Yeah.
It's not a full-time like a councilman.
Correct.
It's a part-time.
Yeah, you meet 6 times a year. You get $80 a meeting.
Right.
So I said, you know what? I can be a captain at Metro, and I can do this at the same time.
You could do them simultaneously.
But you have to run for office. You have to get elected. So I'll never forget, I got like 6 of my friends together and said, hey, I'm thinking about running for the Board of Regents. Does anybody know how to run a campaign? And they all looked at me and said, no, we don't know anything about it. So I was
Right,
like,
but
all right,
you
you're
get
the
6
guy.
cops, you could build a deck, right?
Yeah,
You could
exactly.
mow a lawn, or you could run for Board of Regents.
So I ran against 2 other gentlemen, and I ended up winning. And then I ran for my second term unopposed. So what happened was in 2009,
Tell me about the Board of Regents. What is
Yeah.
that job?
So
Exactly. I mean, I know Byron Brooks. Is he in that
correct.
seat now?
Good friend of mine.
All right. So what is he doing? What did you do? What does that position
So
entail?
the Board of Regents is the policy-making body for the Nevada System of Higher Education, which makes up the 2 universities, UNLV and UNR, the 4 community colleges, the Nevada State College, and the Desert Research Institute. So they're the policy-making body. And then there's the chancellor who runs the system, and then each school has their own president. But the Board of Regents would get together and make policy for how it
for
works.
the chancellor or
No,
for
for the whole system.
For the system. So,
So-
it's not like the school board where the school board makes recommendations to the
Right.
superintendent and the superintendent implements it.
Yeah.
You are actually the decision makers.
Yeah. So the most recent one involving the Board of Regents, just a month ago, was they voted on whether all students and faculty should be vaccinated
Right.
with the COVID-19 vaccine. And it was very controversial, and it was a split vote to force vaccination. And Byron Brooks, I will commend him, he voted against it, and I would have voted against
Right.
that too. So those are the kind of issues. So they approved the budgets, and those sorts of things. So it was, I enjoyed it. It didn't interfere with my captain job. So in 2009, the Las Vegas City Council, Ward 4, which is where I live, it became an open seat.
And are you termed out after 2 years as Board of Regents?
3 terms.
Oh, so you could have run again.
Yes, I was in the middle of my second term.
Gotcha.
So I said, you know what? I'm kind of towards the end of my career, and all I know is public service. I don't know how to do what you're doing. I don't know how to open up a business. All I know is public service. So I said, you know what? Let me, and I've run twice, so I kind of understand campaigning.
Right.
So I ended up deciding to run for the Las Vegas City Council. There was 6 of us that ran, and I ended up winning.
And that's 6. And then how does that work? In the primary, they narrow it down to 2?
Correct.
So who did you end up running against?
I ran against the planning commissioner for Ward 4. So I was not supposed to win.
Right. So you had an in-house guy, and you were the outside
He was
guy.
kind of considered the incumbent in-house. I was the outside.
It was his turn.
Correct. That's
I
exactly
see a lot
right.
of that. The more I do about these politics, it's always somebody's turn. It's like,
Right.
well, what about the best guy for the job?
And
it looks like they got the best guy for the job.
I appreciate that. And the other variable is there hadn't been a Republican elected to the city council in 15 years. So people were telling me, it's not
Wasting
your
your
turn.
time.
You're not a Democrat. You're not going to win. And I say, you know what?
And were you a staunch conservative, or were you more like a middle of the road, moderate cop type of I'm just gonna do the right thing type of guy?
Right. No, I was a registered Republican, but I was just, hey, we need safe neighborhoods and we need support our police officers. I wasn't really involved in any the moral conservative
It
issues.
sounds like the same thing we're worried about now. It sounds like the
Yeah.
conservatives and Republicans just simply want to keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, it's about jobs. It's about public safety. It's about supporting small businesses, and I wanted to do things that would help the community, especially Ward 4, which is I was going to represent.
And where is Ward 4?
So Ward 4 is basically the middle of the Northwest. So if you go to West Charleston, where Costco is,
Right.
if you go from there up to Lake Mead, it's Ward 2. Lake Mead to 215 is Ward 4. North of 215 is Ward 6.
Guys, is that like the prison or whatever up in the Northwest? Oh, no, that's Northeast. Sorry, Northwest.
Yeah,
Gotcha,
Northwest.
by the mountain.
Yes,
Lone
by
Mountain,
215.
stuff
Just
like
follow
that.
215.
Centennial and stuff.
Yeah, so I have Sun City, Summerlin, Desert Shores, Painted
Cool.
Desert, those sorts of communities. So I worked the hardest, and I ended up winning, and I surprised everybody, and I ran for my second term. I got
did you have to retire then?
yes,
You
and then I retired. I took office and retired in December of 2009.
Wow, and what does your wife think about you getting more and more political?
She's she just supports. I talk to her about everything. This is what I want to do. What do you think? And once we decide together, this is the right thing to do.
Is she your
supports me.
consigliere?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. I run everything by her. Absolutely.
And then what do you do when you're on the city council? What are they in charge of?
Well, so there's really two parts. It's a big part of it is land use. So we're responsible.
And that's big
for,
in Nevada.
It is. It's responsible for zoning, where things go, special use permits, liquor licenses. Should a building go here? Should a housing
How tall?
go there? How tall? Yeah, exactly. So we go through a lot of that, and the rest of it is basically 70% of our budget goes to public safety. So we fund 40% of the Las Vegas Police Department's budget. We fund our own Department of Public Safety for the city.
Yeah.
We fund the city jail. We fund code enforcement. So
Now, every single
yeah.
one of these subjects you bring up, we're very diametrically opposed to the other side of the political aisle. I mean, this must have been an uphill battle. You say you're the first city councilman that was a Republican in 15 years. You're talking about stuff like the surveillance state, which, Republicans are a lot less for. Democrats seem to be a lot more for the surveillance state. There was something else you just mentioned. Oh, land use and stuff like that. I believe the conservative view is we need, single-family homes, one-story, two-story, no skyscrapers. The
Right.
taller the buildings, the more democratic your political leanings seem to be. So were you trying to keep single families as opposed to large apartment complexes? Were you looking to have, better jail situations rather than emptying the jails? These are all things that we're diametrically opposed. Can you talk about what it was like? Were you the lone Republican at the time?
Yeah, I was, and there was a lot of 6-1 votes because a lot of it had to do with building things that we were borrowing money as a city, and the residents were against it. They didn't want their tax dollars spent that way. So when it comes to land use, what's absolutely important to me is if somebody wants to build something in a particular area, I want to know what the people that already live there and own businesses, what is their thought? What do they think about the project? And if they're completely against it, then I'm going to support them. If
you think it might be a better idea. We had this conversation with another candidate. The difference between a moral stance and an academic stance. You're going to talk about abortion, I'm guessing if everybody in your district was pro-abortion, you probably would have to stick to your guns. But at the same time, if they all, want to put a bicycle lane in the road, and you think the bicycle lane needs to be there, and they all say, we don't want the bicycle lane, you would go with the will of the people in
Right.
that instance.
So we get people that want to put commercial next to residential, and the residents don't want it. We have people that want to put an apartment complex next to single family homes. The people don't want it there, so I'm not going
Right.
to support it.
Right.
So it's a lot of, if there's no public input, then I'll have to make the decision myself, because the people are kind of
put their trust in
we don't really know what to do, or we
Right.
don't care. So, but my focus has always been on public safety. So, for example, I'll give you another example. When I was campaigning my first time, I was in Sun City, Summerlin a lot, knocking on doors and talking to folks. And their number one priority was they wanted a fire station in Sun City, Summerlin, and not so much because houses were burning, but for the medical attention. It was taking
Right,
too
the
long.
ambulances,
It was
right.
taking too long to get into the community, and people were suffering.
Right.
So.
Where 5 minutes could be
Yeah.
life or death.
Right. So my first term on the city council, I built Fire Station 107, and I guarantee it saved lives. And those are the things I focus on: is what do the people want? What is going to benefit them?
Right.
And that's what I really focus on.
Right. And if you're not knocking on those doors and you're not in touch with the people, you're not going to understand. You're going to be more concerned about a bike lane that nobody's
Right.
really worried about. When
Exactly.
everybody's saying, doesn't anybody understand? I just need a hospital right here.
Right.
Or at least ambulatory service.
Right.
I also know then, since you were from 2000, you're still a councilman.
Correct.
So this is 12 years going on now that you've been a councilman. That's quite a tenure. And Vegas has undergone quite a lot of change since then, including stuff like legalization of marijuana and building all these buildings, whether you're talking about city center or, well, that was right before you, I'm guessing. But, you know, this La Fontainebleau, which makes me want to throw up every time I see it on the Strip. You know, what was it like growing up? And then obviously you had some Republicans start to join you. What was the makeup? What was the change in the makeup? And what were some of the things that, you know, you fought against that got passed that now you could say, look, I told you so? And how do you feel about the legalization of marijuana? Your
Right.
entire, you know, tenure over there.
So when I was elected in 2009, that's when we had the big recession.
Right.
Economy crashed, buildings stopped, people were leaving the state because there were no jobs. Our budget at the city went from like $550 million down to $350 million.
Wow.
So we were laying people off the city. It was pretty difficult. We had to make some really tough decisions because we just weren't having the revenue coming in. And the one thing I kept telling everybody is we're not raising taxes. We can't raise property taxes. We can't raise taxes on people that are suffering
That will
right
stifle
now.
the recovery.
Yeah. So I stuck to my guns on that, and we didn't. We never ended up raising.
You
any
were able to
taxes.
stop that
Yep.
almost single-handedly.
My voice became very prominent. So we ended up not voting on any tax increases, and as we came out of it, budgets started to get better. We started to get being able to hire people back.
Right.
We ended up laying off 800 people. So we had to go through that process, which was very difficult. And then once we got through that, then we started, increasing the budget for Metro. You're never going to find me defunding the police. I'm going to be the guy that we need to hire more cops. We need to have more police officers out there. We need to have better training for them, the best equipment, that sort of thing. So that was really my focus. Now, you mentioned the marijuana. That was an interesting process because
I heard another media personality ambushed you this morning with that question. That's what the rumor is.
That's
All us media
yes.
personalities, we're on a group chat.
So I have a little history. So just to put it all in perspective, when I was a young police officer, marijuana was a felony. It was a prison term.
That's crazy, the evolution.
That's the way it was. And so that's kind of how my background, that's what I was brought up on. So when it came time to talk about legalizing marijuana, I was against it.
Because it was instilled in your head. And this is where we talk about the brainwashing.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's how you're brought up. I'm
Right.
guessing if Stavros Anthony was brought up now, he would care less about marijuana because the culture is accepting of it.
Right.
But young Stavros Anthony, as he's becoming a cop, they're saying felony, felony, bad, bad. And you're like, felony, felony, bad, bad.
Sure. So we started having a discussion. I was on board with not legalizing it. And then we went through this process. And eventually it was put to the vote of the people, and the people voted, we want to legalize marijuana. And I say, you know what? If that's the way that people want it, then I'm okay with it.
So this wasn't the moral issue that you wanted to die on a hill for?
No, I was against it. I gave my opinion, but once the people decided, then we went through a process where it was legalized, and then we went through this process of opening up dispensaries.
Right, that's land use, yada, yada,
that
yada.
That was a lot of work getting through that. Not only dispensaries, but grows.
Right.
And,
where, schools and
where
churches.
they're going to be located. So we went through all that process. We're really going through that process today. And I will say this. The people that are in the marijuana business today, the dispensaries, the growers, they've been top notch. They've been 100% involved in making sure their industry is
clean.
It doesn't cause any trouble. It fits in with neighborhoods, and I'm very impressed with everybody that got involved in the marijuana business. They've been a great partner in Nevada, and you know what? They're providing a service to people. They're providing a product to people that want it, and they're paying their taxes, and they're not causing any social issues.
And
that
you've
I've
evolved
seen.
in your view.
Absolutely.
I mean, me personally, I'm for freedom. I'm 100% fine with people legalizing marijuana. And when I was younger, I used to like the smell of marijuana. But now I hate the fact that you pull up to the corner of Rainbow and Tropicana and all you smell is marijuana. Or you're driving down the strip and you smell it. But that's even a whole nother point. What I was wondering about is, when you're talking about these land use things, I heard a lot of grumblings back in 2019 that it was a lot of this old money, like, doctors and lawyers and businessmen who were monopolizing on the marijuana trade, where, obviously we don't want pimps, becoming marijuana distributors, but at the same time, it felt like people saw an opportunity, and the old elites were the ones who were getting the approvals for the land use, where more mom and pops were not able to do that, whether that's a lack of resources and lawyers, or whether that's a lack of connections. Did you see any of that, and how would you respond to anything like that?
At the beginning there was so much uncertainty. I mean, where do you get a license? Who's going to license you? How much does it cost? Where are you going to get the marijuana from? Who's going to run your store? And what it came down to is it began as a very expensive proposition at the beginning, and the only people that could open up dispensaries and grows were people that had a lot of money and
that could afford the lawyers and the planners and the architects.
Yeah, it was millions and millions of dollars to do that. So they're not mom and pop operations. Now today, that's kind of shaking itself out, where maybe somebody that you don't need millions of dollars to open some place up. You can open up a smaller facility in the right place, and it doesn't cost as much. But at the beginning, it was a lot of people with wealth that were involved.
Did you see anything nefarious that
No.
that may have been like people trying to win the hearts and minds of councilmen or anything like that?
When it came to me personally, no, because everyone knows I have integrity, and you can't come to me and try to slip something through. It's not going to happen with me. I'm going to call you out on it. But actually, I did not. We at the city of Las Vegas, we sat down as a city council and said, we want to make sure that this is on the up and up. We want to make sure that these businesses are treated like any other business, but they're not going to get anything extra either. They're going to be treated like a business.
Right.
We're going to put in some regulations to make sure that we don't have any problems. So we treated it very, very seriously. And I think because of that, we were able to come up with a good process to give out the licenses, to give out the land. And I personally did not see anything nefarious. I think it was I really thought it was a good process that everybody went through, and the people that applied were very professional. So I did maybe some things happened that I don't know about,
right.
But I didn't say anything myself.
And then the last thing about the city council and stuff like that, I wanted to ask you about that eyesore by the Stratosphere, La Fontainebleau, is that the name of it? The big behemoth?
Yeah.
The big blue thing?
Yeah.
I see in the newspaper, every year they say, construction construction's resuming again, and it'll be open in 3 years. And I've been seeing that since 2009 or 10.
Right.
Is anything ever going to happen with that thing?
Well, Sahara Boulevard, If you go north of Sahara, it's the city of Las Vegas. If you go south of Sahara, it's Clark County. So I have nothing to do with the Fontainebleau. It's the Clark County Commission is involved in that. So you're going to have to get the Clark County Commissioner for that district on your radio show, and you ask him about that. Because
are you telling me if you were in charge of that, it wouldn't look like that?
No.
Promise? I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay.
All right. So then you also got involved in education, something with Founders Academy, which was a charter school. And I was thinking when you were saying, like in the beginning, it was very corporate and big money was needed. And now as things evolve and become more mainstream, it's easier for a mom and pop to order maybe a marijuana business. I'm seeing the same thing maybe with charter schools where 10, 15, 20 years ago you needed big money, big lawyers, big stuff. And now it seems like it's becoming more normalized and easier for, maybe not the average person, but someone to open a charter school without being a gajillionaire.
That's correct.
What was your experience with schools? And what was was it Founders Academy?
Yeah, so what happened was there was a couple of individuals that wanted to create a charter school here based on the Hillsdale College model. Hillsdale College, which is very conservative, they don't take any federal money.
Right.
They teach a lot.
I think they work with PragerU sometimes in spreading conservative education.
Correct. So they wanted Hillsdale College to come in with their curriculum and do a charter school. So they called me up and said, hey, would you mind being on our board? This is brand new. We've never done this before, and we want to take a shot at it. So none of us had any money, really. It was just our brains, and we ended up taking that curriculum and creating the Founders Academy, and we started it from scratch with just a couple of grades, and now it's a high school. It's up on the northwest part of the valley. It's called Founders Academy. I believe they have 600 kids on a waiting list waiting to get into it. And this is how we should be treating our educational system. It should be about giving freedom to parents to decide where they want to put their kids. Yeah. And we have a lot of parents that want to put their kids in charter schools, specifically Founders Academy, and I'm a big proponent of having lots of options for people to educate their kids, and their tax dollars should go where they want to go, whether it's homeschooling or a private school or a charter school, or if they want to. Both my kids went to public school. They went to public elementary school and middle and high school, and they're fine. Right. So, but some parents want to put their kids somewhere else. So, or
education seems to be evolving as well, and parents are more astute to what's going on. And I've always told kids you could go to the worst school at CCSD. If you're proactive about your own education, correct, you could still get a great education. It just might be a little tougher because people aren't going to cheerlead you as much. I mean, that's really the biggest difference between a bad school and a good school. Is a bad school, you got to be proactive, where at a good school, you're going to get that education whether you like it or not.
Right.
But that's and Founders Academy is going strong still. And then we got to talk about, last thing before we get into your upcoming race, is you were running for a Clark County Commissioner in 2020. And everybody's talking about whether it's taboo to talk about election integrity or was there any fraud, this, that, the other thing. And everybody's like, you're not an expert. That's anecdotal evidence. 20 votes here or 50 votes there wouldn't change a race. Biden's president, this, that, the other thing. And, a lot of people are getting deplatformed for even questioning it. I mean, you've got an incredibly unique perspective because in this same election where there are so many allegations of such things, and I'll reiterate again, if you want to ever hear about Nevada in particular, the Johnny Bruce Show had Alita Benson on in season 2. You could always look up exactly how she outlines what may have happened. But you yourself, you were in an election that got over 150,000 votes, and you ended up losing by 12. And if I remember correctly, which my memory is not great, but like on election day, you were way ahead, and then a couple of days later, they were counting votes, and the lead was less and less, and then 7 days later, you were winning by 12 votes, and then they had a weekend or something, they came back, and then they said, you lost by 12, case closed. I mean, first of all, what was that experience like personally? Forget about the Fox News and the Trump and, all this other stuff. I mean, for you personally, what was that like? And then if you could get into the, the politic, the media, this big side of the story.
So I'm not afraid to say that my election was stolen. It was absolutely stolen. It was rigged. The Democrat Party did not want me on the Clark County Commission because there hadn't been a Republican on the Clark County Commission in 15 years, and they didn't want me messing up their club. They got a Democrat club over there, and so they stole it from me.
You got motive. And you're declaring it. You're not alleging it. You're declaring it.
It's
so
true.
What? I mean, you have proof.
So let me take you back, and I'll go through the whole thing. So under COVID, the Democrat legislature and the Democrat governor passed a couple of laws that absolutely destroyed our election system. The first one was an all mail-in ballot. If you go back to Jimmy Carter, he had a committee that said the best way to cheat in an election is an all mail ballot. You can't supervise it. You don't know who's voting. And the second thing is voter ID. People need to show ID. And then ballot harvesting was a way to cheat. So fast forward to 3 years ago, that's exactly what the state legislature did. They passed all mail-in ballot under the cover of COVID. And it was an emergency. All mail-in ballots, ballot harvesting, you can register the same day you vote. Right. You get automatic registration at DMV. Voting is going to be for 30 days. I
mean, this is basically as loose as you could possibly run an election.
Yes, they completely destroyed election integrity because you can't supervise any of this stuff. So they did it as an emergency, and then my election comes up. So that's how the election. Instead of 2 weeks of early voting, show up and show your ID. If you want a ballot in the mail, you have to request it, and you have to sign for it. And
you can do if you have COVID or you're scared of COVID,
absolutely.
You can request it, right?
So they destroyed all that. So we had the election, as you mentioned. There was 150,000 votes cast, and when I woke up on election day, I was up 1,700 votes. And I thought I won. In fact, I must have gotten 500 congratulations. Hey, you won. And then for the next 10 days, they counted mail-in ballots. For 10 days after the election, and every single day, instead of being close, it was 60-40. My opponent won 60, I won 40.
Right,
which
so
statistically,
nibbling away.
It shouldn't have been that way. It should have been a lot closer. Every day it nibbled away until the last day, the election directors said, looks like you lost by 10 votes. So I said, really? So we're kind of finding out what we're going to do. So it gets even better. So the election, what happens is city councils and county commissions have to do what's called canvass. They canvass the election, and then they certify the election once they canvass it. So the election director for the Clark County Commission went to the Clark County Commission and said, hey, you can certify all the elections. I've canvassed them all, except for Stavros Anthony.
Right, I remember that.
I have 139 problem ballots, and if the spread was 1,000, then 139
is insignificant.
Yeah, but it's 10, so I can't tell you who won. I don't know if Stavros won or his opponent won. And according to NRS, I'm asking you to hold a special election. We can do it in a couple of months.
And I believe I remember that as well.
Yeah. And we were surprised. We didn't know about this until they did it at the county commission. And the Clark County Commission, I was kind of surprised, voted 6-1 to hold a special election. So we were getting ready to hold a special election, and then I guarantee you the weight of the Democratic Party fell on top of these 6 county commissioners. I almost guarantee from the national down to the local level, because what was happening was Trump was going to court and trying to overturn the election, and they didn't want this as ammunition.
Right, because you might have won.
Exactly. So 2 weeks later, for no reason,
they had a revote,
and they voted 7-0 to certify the election. They had no public comment. They gave no reason. They certified it. We were astonished, couldn't believe it. So we did a recount just to do it, and they charged me $85,000.
Right.
And at the beginning was a 10-vote loss. In the middle of the recount, they said, well, it looks like he lost by 30 votes. At the end of the recount, I ended up losing 15 votes. So the vote changed 3 times,
Right.
which never happens in history. It's always,
Right, it's a
recounts are
number.
always the same. But they're counting mail-in ballots, and mail-in ballots were all screwed up. So they said, it looks like you lost by 15 votes, and that was the end of it. And
there's no recourse then. That's that.
and I guarantee you, the mail-in ballots caused me to lose the election. The Clark County Commission stole the election from me when they should have had a special election. All these shenanigans that they put together. And the interesting thing is it was never really investigated. None of it was looked into. It would be like...
the only investigation was the one dude saying there's 140 votes that we're not sure of.
Right.
That was the extent of the
Yeah,
investigation.
it would be like you calling up the police department and say, hey, it looks like a couple of houses in my neighborhood are broken into, and they say, well, we don't have time to come out, and then they report, well, there's no burglaries in your neighborhood because nobody investigated it.
Right.
So there was no investigation, there was nobody checking all this stuff out, and they beat me up pretty good. It was quite a process to go through all that, but as Rocky Balboa says, it's not how hard you get hit, it's whether you get back up. So
and did
I'm
anybody
back
reach
up.
out to you like Trump or anybody from the RNC? Because obviously there's lots of elections in question, but there's not many that are single-digit differences.
Right. No, I've kind of fought this on my own.
Really?
Yeah.
That's disappointing. Because you could tell that the DNC got involved.
They did.
On their side.
They did.
I wish you had that same support. All right, so now you said, screw commissioner. I'm going to go for lieutenant governor. Besides being the assistant governor or the governor in waiting if he gets hit by a bus, what does the lieutenant governor do?
So that's a great question because everybody asks me that. So which is unfortunate. Everybody should know what the lieutenant governor does, and when I'm the lieutenant governor, everybody's going to know about it. So basically the lieutenant governor has a couple of responsibilities. Number one, the lieutenant governor is supposed to promote tourism and small businesses. So I will be an advocate.
You make it sound like that's the same thing.
Well, it's tourism comes in to support small businesses. I mean, we want people to come here because it not only supports, Caesar's Palace, but it supports the guy that has a cleaning company that works, somewhere near the Strip.
Right.
So it is all together. It's people coming here and that are supporting small businesses, but all the small businesses that may not be involved in tourism, all the way not in just Southern Nevada, but all over the state. So I want to make sure that the state is doing everything it can to support small businesses and tourism, but more importantly, get out of their way. So reduce taxes, reduce regulations, reduce licensing. That's what I've done at the city of Las Vegas. I spent a lot of time doing that. So I want to make sure that the lieutenant governor is the one that is representing small businesses and tourism at a state level. That's exactly right.
And, is that why small businesses are getting beat up so bad? Because we don't have a lieutenant governor ever since Biden took office?
Well, that's part of it, and part of it is the state is beating up on small businesses. I mean, during this entire COVID period, they've been shutting down small businesses, allowing big businesses to stay open. They've been put in more regulations. They've made the life of a small business owner just ridiculous and
nearly impossible.
Yeah, and I think under the current administration, the state's going to continue that. So I'm going to go in there and try to reverse that and try to, for example.
Yeah, besides red tape, besides fees, which are annoying and more than they should be, but bigger than that.
Yeah.
What can you do?
So bigger than that.
Well, if you reduce my business license from $198 to $99 and you make me send one email instead of 2 emails, that's really good.
Yes.
I mean, really good conservative public representation. But, what else can we do for small businesses that are suffering so bad and they don't know what the future looks like on a day-to-day basis?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't have the answer for that. So what I'm going to do when I'm lieutenant governor is form a small business commission of small business owners and get them together, get 20, 30 people together and say, hey, what is it that the state can do or not do to help to stay out of your way, to promote you? That I'm going to plan on doing that because it's it's a small business owner that understands what their obstacles are, and I want them to relay that to me so I can support them through the state.
And then you're going to also be like the chairman or part of a bunch of other boards, right? I mean, I think the governor, when I'm looking at the setup of our government, I think it's way too big. But with that said, the governor appoints the head of like 100 different boards, and I think you got to sit on like a dozen of them, and you got to have your thumb, in everything from education to economics to land use. And it sounds like you have a lot of good experience with that kind of stuff. But how do you feel about the way the government is structured? And how would you feel it's kind of weird to have a Democrat and a Republican, what if Sisolak was to win, but you were to win the lieutenant governor? How does that all work?
Well, when it comes to the lieutenant governor position, he sits on, according to NRS, he sits on two boards. He's the chair of the Tourism Commission, and he's the vice chair of the Transportation Commission. So It's those two. Anything above that would be, the governor says, hey, I would like you to chair this commission I'm forming, or
right.
I would like you to be involved
in this. The
rest
is pick and choose this and that.
Exactly.
Appointed.
So it is quite a dichotomy if you have two Republicans as governor, lieutenant governor, or the vice versa, or you have a Republican in one and a Democrat in the other. So, if it is that way, where the governor's Democrat now Republican, I'm just going to focus on doing my job.
Small business and tourism and transportation.
And I'm going to work with the governor when we agree on doing something, and if we disagree, I'm going to voice my opinion.
Do you have any thoughts on the gubernatorial candidates?
There's a bunch of good people running for governor.
I'm not asking you to endorse someone, but is there anyone from the Republican side that you don't like?
I'm going to let them duke it out.
Do you have a top three?
I'm going to let them duke it out.
Do you have a favorite?
I'm going to let them fight.
Should they be old?
There's always a
tall,
good time.
Or fat?
There's
or
always
skinny?
a good time not to answer a
or
question.
Or men or women? All right. How about your competitors?
Well, let me tell you the rest of the lieutenant governor,
so
people understand
more.
it. The second part is the Homeland Security piece. So the lieutenant governor does have a Homeland.
And we are international here in Vegas.
So I'm going to make sure that as lieutenant governor, I'm going to go around and talk to all the police chiefs and sheriffs and make sure that they have everything they need from the state to protect their communities. So
and also to work with each other?
Yeah. I'm going to be their champion and, exactly, try to get everybody working together. And they already are, but I want to make sure they're getting the right resources. So that's number two. And then number three is the lieutenant governor is the president of the Senate during the legislative session. So I would be actually running the Senate side. And then the only time I would vote is if there's a tie,
which as of lately is not something that's been coming up, but hopefully 2022 make Nevada red.
And so
we have a better chance at getting the Senate than we do of the Assembly.
Correct. So that's what and then as you mentioned at the beginning, if the governor gets hit by a bus, then lieutenant governor becomes a governor.
You're ready?
I'm ready.
Well, speaking of competition in the primary on the Republican side, who do you think is your biggest competition for the Republican ticket?
So I won't really know what the competition is until March. That's when actually filing is. So people are talking about they're going to run, they're not going to run. It looks like there's some serious folks out there, but I'm not really going to know until March.
Well, do you have an opinion on, say, Dan Schwartz? I'm sure you've worked with him and spoken with him in the past.
Dan Schwartz is a good man. I like him a lot. But it seems like everybody that I'm running against, they seem like nice people. But I'm going to focus on my campaign. I'm just going to get my message out there. I mean, this is the way it works, is if you're running for office, you get your message out there and you let the voters decide. And if they want me to be the Republican nominee for lieutenant governor, I'm honored that they would pick me.
Because I also know that there's somebody who I assume, I don't know for sure, but I assume you're friends with. I've seen you at events with Mac Miller before. You guys seem like you guys are both constitutional conservatives with a bent on the same things, back to blue, yada, yada, yada. So how do you feel about maybe running against a friend like Mac Miller?
Well, in politics, I know Mac Miller very well. We talk all the time. I don't know if we're considered friends. I mean, I have my friends that I go out and drink with and watch football.
Right.
But he seems like a nice guy. But Again, during the primary, I'm not talking about my opponents. I'm just going to go out there and do my thing, and they're going to do their thing. And if the voters decide I'm going to be their nominee, I'd be honored if they pick somebody else and they decide who they're.
Well, I mean, you've been very candid until I brought up other Republicans, but there's the Ronald Reagan rule, number one. And number two, what was I going to say? I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought because I thought about Ronald Reagan and his, you don't talk bad about other Republicans. But, I do have to ask you about just one more person, because I heard a rumor, and I don't know if it's true or not, that Michelle Fiore is really got her eye on the lieutenant governor position, and she's running for governor thinking it would build up her hype, build up her popularity, build up her image. And then when it's time to file, she might sweep in and just jump into that lieutenant governor's race. How would you feel about that?
That's the first I heard of that.
Intriguing?
Well, it is. It's interesting, but she sure is focused on running for governor. So
right. And you worked pretty closely with her on the council and stuff like that. What is it like working with her?
I get along with her very well. She's very. She just has a different style. I'm more calm and strategic, and Michelle is more of a flair. She has a
You're a
flair
conservative, and she's a bombastic conservative.
Okay.
Is that a way to put it?
I like her because of that. She has more, I guess I have to say she has more personality than I do.
Okay. And then before I let you go, I want to talk about some of the issues and some of the platform that you're running on. You talk a lot about like safety, public safety, regarding, we're turning into a blue city and a blue state, and we're worried about being a sanctuary city in our relationship with ICE, and the border is not too far. Crime, I believe murders are up 75% in Clark County right now. What's your stance on safety? What do you think are some of the solutions, and what do you think that some of the things that we should have been doing better over the past 4 years that you would try to rectify?
Well, really the four main topics that I'm very, very interested in is always number one is public safety. That's really the topic most people are they interested in. They want a safe neighborhood. They want a safe place to go to work. They don't want to be a victim of a crime. So that's going to be my number one priority. The other three are helping small businesses. We already talked about that. Education, we talked about that. School choice, parental freedom, and then election integrity. We got to get rid of all these stupid laws that they passed during an emergency session, but now they made them permanent.
Do you know they said we were crazy when they were doing that stuff, and we said, you guys are going to try to make this permanent. They all said you were crazy, you're a conspiracy theorist, This is just because of COVID. And now it's written into law, ballot harvesting and mass mailing out of ballots. I mean, do you think you can win in an election like that?
That's that is a great question that we'll find out a year from now. And the difference is when they did the emergency, they passed all this stuff. Everybody was,
flying by the seat of their pants.
Yeah, where everybody's scared of COVID. They're not sure what to do. Is this a good idea? They're not doing this for election fraud. They're doing this to protect us. And we weren't paying that much attention. But now we know, as far as I'm concerned, that they passed this stuff in order to steal the election. They didn't do it because of COVID. They did it because of that. And now the Republican Party, I know for a fact because I've told, they're going to bring people in and resources to stay on top of this. So the last time we got caught with our tails behind our leg, this time we're going to be paying attention. So the chances of election fraud are still there, but it's going to be a little bit tougher this go around. And
you brought something up, and maybe you would be happy that I forgot to bring it up, but you reminded me of something I had to ask you about regarding the Republican Party and, having people, whether you're talking about poll watchers or you're talking about precinct directors, and there's an ongoing feud here in Clark County between two contingents that call themselves the Clark County Republican Party. And I remember, first of all, we had an election for county party leadership back in July, and Sam Brown was asked to speak, and he got caught up in the middle of this party politics that I think he had no idea what was going on. And, bygones have been bygones. It didn't really hurt him that much. But then I remember You were going to speak, I believe, at a Carrie Buck event, and then people, maybe not Jesse Law himself, but other people from Jesse Law's camp were disappointed that you were going to be speaking with them. And I'm guessing you as a candidate are thinking, I just really want to speak to people, even Democrats or all Republicans. And how do you feel about the drama that's going on here in Clark County and the fighting between, say, Sajak and McDonald, or Carrie Ann Buck and Jesse Law? How do you feel about the situation? How do you feel about you being put in that situation, and how do you think Republicans should react to this? Because a lot of regular old Republicans don't know what to do.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that was an interesting, that was very early in the division, so I guess sometimes I don't pay attention to the political stuff, and I got caught up in, well, you're speaking over here and you shouldn't speak over there, and I started to learn that there was this division, so I just kind of set back and said, I don't want to get involved in this. Let the political party play this out. But the one interesting thing is, when it comes to the Democrat Party, they're in lockstep. They decide this is the way it is, and this is the way it is. Republican Party, and I think it's sometimes it's a good thing, is we like to argue and duke it out a little bit, and in the end it always works out. So right now there's some divisions and heartaches out there, but it'll work itself out. And the only thing I'm going to focus on is getting my message out to the people in the state of Nevada that I'm running for lieutenant governor, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I stand for, and all this other stuff will work itself out.
And, I mean, as far as doing something like that, have you heard from people that said something like, if you spoke with one group or another group, or if you spoke to a Democrat, like, are people telling you that you'd lose their support if you were to, possibly entertain another faction?
I was hearing kind of chatter going, hey, Stavros is doing this and Stavros is doing that, and I mean, nobody directly called me up and said, you should do this or you should do that. Right. I got some advice from some people. They called me, but at the end of the day, I just said, I'm going to step back. I got to work on my lieutenant governor campaign, and everything else we'll fight, and then it'll work out in the end.
But how do you feel about even talking to Democratic groups, if they were, because, obviously you'll be representing everybody. Are you focused on looking for conservative venues, or are you looking to reach a broader audience and maybe turn some blue votes red?
Well, right now it's winning the Republican primary, so that's what I'm going to focus on, Republicans. And then when we get to the general, if a Democrat women's group calls me up and says, hey, can you come out and speak to me? I'll go speak to them, but I'm going to tell them exactly what I would tell a Republican group. So they may not like what I want to, they may not like what I say, but I'm going to stick to my values and my current conservative values. But if they want to hear what I have to say, I'll go talk to them.
And then finally, there's been a lot of concentration on the school board and trying to fix, whether you're talking about curriculum, the textbooks that are in there, the way we discipline our kids, whether we're allowed to suspend or expel students. And they look to the school board, but most of that power rests with the Nevada legislature.
Correct.
So what can you do as a Nevada governor to, do you get a bully pulpit as a Nevada lieutenant governor, or how would you be able to try to affect change for not only school choice as a broad argument, but also to fix our school systems in order to let the kids who are going to public school get the best education available?
So, as I mentioned, the lieutenant governor is the president of the Senate. So the only thing I know about that is that it's a tie-breaking vote.
Right.
Now, what exactly that means to be the president of the Senate procedurally, I can't wait to find out what that is. Right. And I don't know what that is now because I have no reason to look it up yet. But if I am the lieutenant governor, I'm going to have the bully pulpit. I'm going to have there's going to be some things that the president of the Senate does that can have an outcome on election integrity, on school choice, on some of the other things that we talk about that are good for the folks in Nevada. So what those are, I'll study them when I need to.
And I really like the way you evolve, the way you say, I was against the marijuana, but I listened to my people, and now it turned out to be a pretty good thing. I mean, to be able to recognize that it's not always your way or the highway.
Correct.
I think is very not humbling. It would be humble if I did it, but it's a good characteristic. Anyway, I'm getting in trouble. We're out of time. First of all, can you tell everybody how they could find out more about you? I think Adriana's got some pictures of your website. What website is this, and what can people do to help you out?
Sure. So again, my name's Stavros Anthony. My website is Stavros for Nevada, Stavros, FOR, Nevada.com. You can go there, look up my bio. You can donate. You can volunteer. My email is stavrosanthony@gmail.com. That's my personal email. You can contact me there. My cell phone, I'll give it out, as 702-812-0123. You can call me personally on my cell phone to ask a question, to give me some advice, to give me your opinion. I'd be glad to have it. And I'm going to be campaigning during the primary, which is in June. That's when you get to vote if you're a Republican or a Democrat on the Democrat side. And then November will be the general election, where you get to choose the final person for all 5 constitutional positions, as well as everything else that's coming up. So StavrosForNevada.com. Thank you.
And why don't you let them know why they should vote for you? We're going to finish up. You can send them off with a parting message.
Well, I think you should vote for me because I've developed the skills and the knowledge during my 40 years in Las Vegas to do the job of lieutenant governor, and that's supporting small businesses, supporting tourism, keeping our communities safe, and really being a proponent of conservative values when I'm the president of the Senate. Those are the jobs of a lieutenant governor. So you're not going to find anybody with more experience than me when it comes to public safety. You're not going to find anyone with more experience than me when it comes to helping small businesses as far as an elected official. And I'm already part of the legislative process right now. At the city council, we pass ordinances on a regular basis, and that's what the legislature does. So you're not going to find anyone with more experience than me. And that's why I'm running for this position. That's why I picked lieutenant governor, because it fits exactly what I've been doing the last 40 years of my life. And I would be honored to represent the residents of the state of Nevada, not only southern Nevada, but the rurals up in Reno, every place in Nevada. They all need a lieutenant governor that's going to represent them.
Beautiful. And I mean, you're indeed right. You got the qualifications. You got kissing babies down. Every time I talk to somebody who's met you, they all say, "Oh my God, I love Stavros. He's so easy to talk to." And I appreciate your constitutional bent on politics and less government here. And
Yep.
Let's get it going. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me on, and again, thank you for getting the message out that that is powerful, but we need more of it.
Yeah, and guys, that's what he's talking about. We need to get to know our conservative candidates a lot more. We need to get more involved, and we need to be educated about who we're going to be voting to represent us. Otherwise, you end up with disasters like you got on the CCSD Board of Trustees. Let's vet our candidates. Let's find out more about them. Let's find out if they're qualified before they take office. And the only way you could do that, or the best way you could do it, is by hitting that subscribe button. The Johnny Brew Show asks you for one thing and one thing only, to subscribe. And maybe I'll ask you for a second thing, tell a friend. How about that? Because we're going to have every single candidate we could get our hands on. We want to get to know them. We want you to get to know them. And we want to turn Nevada red in 2022 and 24. So once again, thank you, Stavros, for joining us. Thank you always for supporting the Johnny Brew Show. And we will be back with another awesome interview real soon. Thanks so much. My name is John Brookhagen. This is the Johnny Brew Show.